Okay. You know, it's funny. Every time I walk into a toy store these days, I kind of feel like I'm like stepping back in time. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
It's like pink for girls, blue for boys. Like, haven't we moved past this already?
It's a pattern that, yeah, it's hard to ignore.
It
And
is.
it's something that we're going to be taking a deep dive into today, just to see how persistent that really is.
That's right. We're looking at a study today that asks a question I think a lot of us have probably thought about at one point or another, like, have children's toy preferences really changed
Yeah.
over the past 50 years?
Right.
You might be surprised at what this research actually found.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Data on the screen, numbers come alive. Male, female flows where the patterns thrive. Visual charts, public colors unify. Gender decoded, bringing truth to light. Watch them all drum fill. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide.
Ever notice how some kids just seem drawn to certain toys? Like you see boys gravitating towards trucks and girls towards dolls. It's a pattern people have noticed, like forever, right?
Yeah.
Well, we are going to take a deep dive into some research on that today.
Yeah, this is really cool research, actually. The paper's called The Stability of Children's Gender-Related Toy Interests, a 50-year perspective.
Catchy.
Right? But the really cool thing is it doesn't just look at one point in time. It looks at data from 75 studies over 5 decades.
Whoa, 50 years. That's like a crazy long time. I mean, think how much things have changed just in the last 10 years. You'd think those societal shifts,
Yeah.
like with, more women in the workforce these days and how people think about gender roles and, evolving and stuff, you'd think all that would like really change toy preferences, right?
Yeah, you'd think so. But that's what's so interesting about this research. They found that even with all those changes, kids' preferences for like gender-typical toys have pretty much stayed the same. And this isn't just like a casual observation either. They use this thing called meta-analysis to combine all that data from those 75 studies.
Meta-analysis, huh?
Yeah, and basically it's a way to get like a really good overall picture of what's going on,
Oh, I see. So like a really thorough way of crunching the numbers from 50 years worth of data on kids and their toys.
Yeah.
So what'd they find?
Well, they found that boys generally prefer toys that are typically labeled as like masculine, like trucks, building blocks, action figures, that kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
And girls more often than not chose toys associated with like feminine roles, dolls, tea sets, things like that.
Right.
What was really striking though is when they put all this on a graph, like visualize the data, most of it clustered above 0. This means no matter what, boys usually liked boy toys and girls liked girl toys.
Huh. That's interesting. I never thought about it visually like that. So then does that mean like boys are just like hardwired to like building stuff and girls nurturing? Doesn't that feel kind of like limiting? Like there's no room for kids to be individuals,
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, actually. And researchers have been trying to figure that out for ages. This study didn't just observe the trend, though. They actually explored some reasons why. And one of the big ones is biology.
Biology. So like even before a baby is born, there might be stuff already shaping what they'll be interested in.
That's what this research seems to show, yeah. For example, there's a link between how much testosterone a baby is exposed to in the womb and whether they prefer those, masculine toys. And that's true for both boys and girls.
Whoa, really? That's wild. So like hormones can actually impact brain development in a way that makes kids gravitate toward certain ways of playing even before they're born. How does that even work?
Well, testosterone, for example, it's linked to how the spatial reasoning parts of the brain develop.
Spatial reasoning.
Yeah, and that might explain why even really little baby boys tend to be drawn to toys that are about like manipulating objects in space, like blocks or puzzles.
So it's like biology maybe gets the ball rolling, but that doesn't mean it's the whole story, does it? We don't exactly live in bubbles. Like there's all this social stuff and cultural stuff that plays a role too, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like biology maybe provides the initial spark, but then it's like the world around us that like throws gasoline on it,
Yeah, that's true.
Like Think about it. From the moment they're born, kids are basically bombarded with messages about what's considered like appropriate for boys versus girls.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it starts with like the clothes we dress them in and the colors we use in the rooms, and even just like going to the store. Have you ever noticed how toy aisles are still basically divided into pink and blue sections?
Oh my gosh, yes. And it's not even just the aisles. Like, even the packaging itself is so gendered. You'll see, like, pink princesses and ponies for girls and then, like, dark colors and action figures for boys. It's almost like the marketing is telling them what they should like before they even have a chance to decide for themselves.
Yeah, it's like everywhere you look. This reminds me of when my nephew was little. I remember trying to find him a truck that wasn't camo green or had skulls on it. It was seriously impossible.
Yeah. It's definitely marketing at work. And, this kind of gendered marketing doesn't stop at toys. It's in the shows they watch, the books they read, even like the little ways we praise kids when they're playing. Like we might say, what a strong boy building that tower, or you're such a sweet girl taking care of your baby doll. And it's like those things seem innocent enough that they can totally send a message about what kind of play is like good for boys versus girls.
Wow. So you got that underlying biological influence, and then society basically amplifies it through like a zillion different things. It's like this crazy feedback loop pushing them further down those paths.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that not every kid fits neatly into these categories.
That's true. What about the kids who don't follow that typical pattern? Like the girls who love building or the boys who are all about dolls? Like, what does that tell us?
That's when things get even more interesting. These kids sometimes face more challenges because they're kind of going against what people expect, but they also have this amazing potential to develop really cool skills and see things from a different perspective.
Right. Like imagine a little girl who grows up to be like this incredible engineer because she loved playing with blocks as a kid, or a boy who's just this amazingly empathetic caregiver because he loved playing with dolls.
Exactly. There's so much value in those differences and in encouraging kids to just explore whatever they're into regardless of, gender. And this actually brings us to the toys themselves. Like, what is it about trucks versus dolls that appeal to boys and girls on average? I think that's worth looking at.
Totally. Yeah, let's get into that. What's up with those toy preferences? Okay, so we're talking about the toys themselves, those trucks and dolls that seem to just grab boys and girls in different ways. Is it more than just society telling them what they should like?
It's actually really cool when you think about the types of play these toys encourage. Like if you look at the ones boys tend to go for the trucks, the blocks, the action figures, they often involve a lot of movement and building and spatial reasoning.
Which kind of makes sense if you think about some of the differences we see between boys and girls developmentally, right? Like I remember reading that boys are usually more physically active on average. And they tend to like explore bigger spaces and do more roughhousing and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And some researchers even think these preferences could go like way back. Like maybe they're connected to our evolutionary history.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They think maybe the skills you'd need for like hunting or building a shelter, which were traditionally, men's work, maybe those are reflected in these early play preferences.
So it's not even just about the toy itself. It's about what that toy lets the kid do. Like it gives them a chance to practice those skills and maybe even tap into some ancient instincts.
That's a really cool way to think about it. And then on the other side, you've got girls who are drawn to dolls and taking care of things, and that might be linked to their social skills and empathy developing.
Right, which again lines up with what we see with girls a lot of the time. They're often more into social stuff and nurturing even when they're really little.
Exactly. And playing pretend with dolls lets them practice those skills, like taking care of someone, navigating relationships, understanding feelings.
So both boys and girls are kind of engaging in these ways of playing that had traditionally been, associated with men and women's roles in society. But we got to remember, we're talking about averages here. There are always going to be kids who don't fit the mold. And actually, those kids can be super valuable.
Absolutely. And that brings up a really important question. Like, what does all this mean for parents and teachers? Do we just say, well, biology is destiny and that's it? Or do we have a responsibility to try and shape kids' interests and help them break free from those stereotypes? What do you think?
I definitely don't think we should just give up and accept things as they are. We know that environment plays a huge role in how kids develop. So I think we should focus on creating environments that let both boys and girls explore all kinds of interests and develop different abilities. What are some things we can do, practically speaking?
Well, first of all, we can ditch the pink and blue toy aisles and just let kids play with whatever they want. you know? And it goes beyond just toys, too. We can pay attention to the language we use with them and the activities we encourage them to try.
I love that. I'm imagining a world where little boys can play with dolls and people are just like, oh, cool, instead of freaking out.
Mm.
And girls who love to build things are praised for being, smart and creative.
Exactly. That's the kind of change we need. And it all starts with being aware of these patterns and how biology and society work together. Then we can start challenging those patterns and make the world a more fair and inclusive place for all kids.
Yeah, this has been such a thought-provoking conversation. Made me think about how much we as a society contribute to these gender things.
Mm.
But that also makes me feel hopeful because it means we can actually change it.
Totally. It all comes back to the power of play. It's not just about having fun. It's about shaping kids' minds and their futures. And if we can create play environments that let them explore a bunch of different interests and challenge those rigid stereotypes, we can help them reach their full potential.
So the next time you see kids playing or you're at the store, think about what messages we're sending to them, about what boys and girls are supposed to like, and how can we encourage them to explore and challenge themselves and embrace what makes them unique. It's definitely something worth thinking about and talking about.